Bold prediction time, version 7.0. This has become our most popular segment. Let's dive right back in, shall we? Got 5 of them tonight, 5 big predictions from you that according to you, you are willing to bet your own money on. Number 1, Dillon Gabriel. UCF? No. UCLA? No. He's at Oklahoma now. And the first bold prediction is Dillon Gabriel is a Heisman finalist. Forget the second one. We'll get back to that in a second. Dillon Gabriel, a Heisman finalist, huh? On the boldness scale, I put this at an 8. That doesn't mean I doubt Dillon Gabriel, nor do I doubt Oklahoma this year. I have questions. I don't have doubts about them. It's just really hard to be a Heisman finalist. That's the first thing we need to remember. Anytime we get a bold prediction that has to do with the Heisman. If you tell me Bryce Young's going to win the Heisman this year, it's still bold. It's not as bold because he's already done it once, but it still would warrant like a 4 or a 5. It's just hard to win the award. Secondly, there's a new everything up there. Now, there's reason to be confident because an offensive coordinator like Jeff Lebby has a track record that you can buy into. He has proven production, and you've got a guy in Dillon Gabriel that you believe possesses the physical tools. You do not have the wealth of supporting cast that you would want, but you certainly are not without a supporting cast either. So there's reason to be excited there. Maybe you guys feel differently. When I picture Oklahoma football this year, I see a path where they even win the Big 12, but they're not lighting up the scoreboard offensively. And over time, I'll tell you what that coincides with. It just coincides with the overall philosophy that Brent Venables wants to play with. I don't know that we've never seen him as a head coach, so we're waiting. All of us are waiting, but I don't know that I see Brent Venables going into a Saturday with visions of, hanging 50 every week. You'd love to do it. Scoring points is how you win football games, but there's a complementary style I think they'll play. So what I'm saying is, I don't know that we'll see these monster stat games from Dillon Gabriel this year, even if they're winning, that he would need to warrant a trip to New York City. So I made that one an 8. Not totally impossible, but I'll be mildly surprised by it, maybe even moderately surprised. The next one, though, gets a very, very strong rating. The next bold prediction is Kansas beats Texas, again, period. And boy, that's a big word there, again. Does anyone even want to look into the abyss of what it would mean if Kansas beat Texas? Of course, a lot of you are shaking your head yes. So why not? Let's recklessly speculate. If this happens, it's happening at the end of the year. Okay, I'm putting a 9 on this, by the way. I just don't think it's happening. I refuse to envision this. But if we are going to entertain this thought, please understand, this game does not happen until November 19th. It's in Lawrence. Anyone been to Lawrence in late November? We'll see. Weather, we'll see. But also, if Texas is vulnerable, losing to Kansas that late in the year, it means they've lost multiple games already. Because you know what your team is by that point now. This is not an early season, kind of catch them before they hit their stride sort of deal. This is late in the year, second to last weekend of the year. They got a game against Baylor the next week. So maybe you're telling me look ahead. But look, if Texas is rolling, if they're like a 1 or 2 loss team, they're winning by multiple scores in this game. But if they go into this game maybe, 4-5 or 5-5 as opposed to 9-1, and it's no different record-wise than it was last year, yeah, at that point anything's in play because this is certainly Super Bowl mode on steroids for Kansas. The kids in that locker room have already beaten them once in Austin, so they're not going to feel like it's some insurmountable task at all. But what I'm asking is, if you had to guess the point spread on this game, because it's so far down the road and there's so many variables with Texas this year, I could see Texas minus 30, and I could see Texas minus like 7.5 or 8. That's not realistic. What I'm saying is there are very, very wide-ranging possibilities here. But I do not believe this is going to happen. And so I'm saying that's a 9. But if it does happen, put the women and children to bed because it's going to be a very, very uncomfortable December for Steve Sarkisian. Next up, staying with the UT, but we're going with the SEC version. Tennessee upsets LSU and goes undefeated heading into Tuscaloosa. Now, let me give you a point of reference here. This is a 6.5 on the boldness scale. Notice what I just said. That is a prediction for Tennessee to be 5-0 when they play Alabama, and I only gave it a 6.5. There's a pretty decent shot of this being the case, and it's not because they play a bunch of cream puffs before Bama either. So let me tell you what the schedule is, and then let me tell you how this could play out. So the game itself is indeed the third Saturday in October this year. Refreshing for us to stick to a rivalry's name for once in our lives. Ball State, they open with. Should be a win. They go to Pitt. Point spread just released on that one. Tennessee is favored by 4 at Pitt. So they're favored. Doesn't mean anything, but they're favored. So easily a very winnable game. Third game, Akron at home. Should be a win. Fourth game of the year, they play Florida at home. They will be favored. Short favorite, but they will be favored in that game. The only game they'll be a dog in, point spread wise, before they play Bama is the game at LSU. That's probably going to be about a field goal game, somewhere around there. All these games are winnable. And I also need to let you know, if you'll notice if you're watching on YouTube, Tennessee has a bye before they go to LSU. LSU's on the road the week before at Auburn. This could happen. And if it were to happen, imagine that. Imagine an undefeated Tennessee, obviously highly ranked, if that's the case, welcoming in Alabama. And Alabama does not have the easiest road right before they play Tennessee either. So that could be, all of a sudden, what I've been wishing for a long time. That could be the shine put back on one of my low-key favorite rivalries in the history of college football. I just mentioned the third Saturday in October. Director Colin knows, because he was raised the right way, what the third Saturday in October means. He put it there on the graphic. If you're 19 years old and you're driving around right now, maybe even in Knoxville or Tuscaloosa, you don't even know. You don't even know about this. You may have heard rumors that this was once a big rivalry. Your life and what you've observed with your own 2 eyeballs has shown you something completely different. 15 or 16 in a row right now for Alabama, whatever the number is. It's embarrassing. So when's it ever going to change? Logic tells you eventually it's got to happen, at the very least. I don't even care if Bama goes in there and wins 31-24. If we get undefeated Tennessee welcoming Alabama in, remember last year when Arkansas welcomed Texas in, and you may have turned that game on and you got an environment like you weren't ready to see, and afterwards you heard all those Arkansas folks talk about the pent-up rage and the old school energy that festered and festered and festered from what historically the Arkansas-Texas rivalry had been, and it just bled out that night. That would happen in Neyland Stadium. That would be Tennessee. They haven't been on equal footing, nowhere close when it comes to playing Alabama, so you haven't witnessed it. But I imagine students at Tennessee, for example, people of that age, if you guys were undefeated when Bama came to town, you would look around that place and you would say, what is this? Like, our volume knob stops at 10, but it feels like a 12 in here tonight. Why does it feel that way? Because they would then find themselves in a place they haven't been in, here's the phrase, quite literally, a generation. General Neyland, just close your ears, my friend. But yeah, that's the case right now. So that would be big. I'm calling that a 6.5. I don't think it's the craziest thing in the world to suggest Tennessee may be undefeated when that happens. And if they do, spoiler alert, we'll be there. Next up, we're going all the way to the West Coast. Now this is interesting. Jeff said, first-year coach Dan Lanning wins the Pac-12 over Lincoln Riley. So not only are we calling the Ducks to win the Pac-12, we're just flat out talking about who they're going to beat. This one I gave a 5. So let's break it down. Oregon winning the Pac-12 is not at all crazy. Now you're talking about predicting the exact matchup. That's a little more out there, but if you're going to pick someone from the South, pick USC or pick Utah. Well, they picked USC. The folks at Fox would love this. I would love this, and I don't even work at Fox. But also, here's the flip side. Here's why this gets a little crazy. You know, if these two teams were to play tomorrow, Oregon would be favored on a neutral field, but that's not where this game would happen. This game would happen at the end of the year. Now, if USC is in the Pac-12 title game, here's what that means. It means it worked. It being year one, Caleb Williams quarterback, Lincoln Riley, and all the transfer portal additions, it worked. So whatever they did in year one, it clicked. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. So if they're in the Pac-12 championship game, thus meaning things worked, that's going to be a really formidable opponent. And at that point, what I'm probably having to do if I'm picking Oregon is I'm choosing Bo Nix over Caleb Williams. I have followed Bo Nix for a while. I have been burned investing in him in the past. Now, if you want to sell me on the fact that he just needed a change of scenery and they're going to utilize him the right way at Oregon, that's cool. I have been sold that bill of goods, though, not the Bo Nix bill of goods, but the whole, bigger, faster, stronger, new program, new sticker on the helmet sort of deal. I've been sold that many times. That's why I'm very hesitant, although I saw the same things that you guys did in the spring game. I'm still very hesitant to just believe that Bo Nix and Oregon are going to be primed to go on a Pac-12 championship run. But as I've said since he was in high school, he possesses the capability. That's never been the issue, never will be the issue with him. It's just, do they have the right ingredients there this year? And if they were to run up on USC at the end of the year, because they don't play him in the regular season, if they run up on them in the Pac-12 championship game, will that version of USC still be able to be taken down by a Bo Nix-led Oregon? That's what I have trouble with. That's why I made it a 5. Otherwise, I could easily see Oregon winning the Pac-12. Last one here. Now, this one's going to sound bold, but it's really not at all. Nebraska wins the Big Ten West. Don't sleep on Scott Frost is the follow-up there. Well, I'm drowsy on Scott Frost, but let me tell you something. This isn't even bold. There is no bold prediction in the Big Ten West. So this is like a 4 for me. Every season can be your season. You could have won 3 games last year like they did. Who cares? This could be your season. They have the 5th best odds to win the Big Ten this year, not the division. They have the 5th best odds to just win the conference. They have the 2nd best odds, therefore, to win their division, right behind Wisconsin. Now, to give you an idea of how wide the gap is in the Big Ten, at least in terms of odds, Ohio State, I think, is a 1-2 favorite to win the Big Ten. Next up is Wisconsin at 10-1, and you go down the list a little ways. Nebraska's 14-1. So there perceptionally is a big gap between Ohio State and everyone else. I would agree with that. But we're not talking about winning the Big Ten. We're talking about just playing for the conference title, therefore winning your division. Look at the murderer's row or lack thereof that we're talking about. We're talking about Iowa. We're talking about Wisconsin. We're talking about Minnesota, Purdue, Illinois, Nebraska, and Northwestern. I know on paper it would look crazy if you went from 3-9 to whatever record it would require, 9 wins, maybe 10 wins in order to make it to Indianapolis. I'm just telling you, knowing what their margins of losses were last year, Casey Thompson transfers in at quarterback. No, it is not that big a leap. And if you have forgotten or you've been tuned out right before we wrap it up here, not the show, just the segment, look at the graphic on the screen. Look at those losses. The losses are by 8 points and by 7 points and by 3 points and by 3 points again, or is that 4? That's 3. 7 points, 5 points. There's the 9 point. There's the blowout, the 9-point loss. Oh, 7 points, 7 points. Ridiculous. So yes, that could happen. I could absolutely see that. I give that one a 4 on the boldness scale. I am probably enjoying those segments, probably because you do the heavy lifting, as much as anything that we've done.